digitaljamsessions.com. Hello and welcome to this Digital Jam session. Today we're joined once again by the lovely Mookie Culhan, and we have the Amelia Kalman back with us as well. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Hello. So, for the benefit of our listeners, would you care to explain once again exactly what you do? And why don't we start with you, Mookie?
Hi everyone, once again, good to be back to the Digital Jam Sessions in Tanya. My name is Mookie. I'm an executive digital producer. I head up Mookie International Limited, which is end-to-end digital production covering web, app, social, live streaming, VR, AR content, mostly within the music and entertainment and broadcasting sectors, but kind of spreads out amongst other realms. Prior to that, I was digital director at MTV for a good 10 years, and my background is in broadcast journalism, so I've seen content change so fast and the way consumers consume this content so quickly. So, hello, welcome to be here.
And Amalia, why don't you tell us all about what you're up to?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a futurist. I'm based here in London. So I write and talk about new technologies and the impact on business. So I do some work with Wired and IBC, and I have an independent innovation newsletter called The Big Reveal.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, ladies. So today, I'm very aware that you are about to embark on a conversation all about biohacking and the future of where we think technology is going and immersivity, amongst other things. And I kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper into this because a lot of people like talking about, cyborgs and integrating technology into the human body. But I kind of want to understand what your thoughts are in terms of actually, what are the tangible benefits of integration of technology for the purposes of immersive technologies? And I say this on the basis of there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, let's put a chip in my arm, or let me put an implant in my ear, or whatever the thing may be. But how does that really actually benefit immersive technologies, whether that's VR or AR technology? How does that actually tangibly benefit those technologies is the question. And I'm going to go to you first, Amaya, because I know that you've done some thinking on this before.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's still at the point where it's kind of a gimmick, if I'm honest. But that being said, it's in its infancy, and I just see it increasing. I mean, the line between technology and the human is increasingly blurred all the time. I'm pretty much attached to my phone, and, with these new glasses by Intel, the Vaunt ones that just came out, I mean, you think about it, and technology is becoming so much more integrated into the human anyways. So I think that in a lot of ways too, we are including technology in the body already. There's, birth control implants, there's cochlear implants, prosthetics, all these kind of things. So the idea of adding technology in isn't a scary one to me. I think it's something that if there is a really good use scenario for it, besides just being cool and showing off to your friends at a pub, I think it'd be really interesting. And I think it will come to that, but what's key to that is being able to experiment with it, having some funding behind it so that it moves kind of from a fringe underground, transhumanism movement into, mainstream. And some of that's coming from the medical industry. And I mean, to me, the big benefit could be that we could start to experience the world in new ways. So we have, 5 senses now. I think, maybe by the end of my life, I'll have about 10 senses. And this will be because I will be enhanced through technology and biohacking.
So it's interesting that you're saying that an integrated future or technological integration isn't scary to you. And that therein lies the kind of the crux of the matter, I think, which is this idea that actually for many mainstream consumers, the idea of integrated technology is still quite scary. That there was this whole era in the kind of 80s and 90s where all of the mainstream culture, TV and music and books, anything to do with technology being integrated into the human body was evil and bad, and cyborgs were going to kill us all, or computers.
Unless you're Mork and Mindy,
unless you're Mork
from work.
But generalistically, that was the perception. It was kind of this really bad negative thing that if you allow technology to be integrated into the body, it would ultimately take us all over and destroy humanity, whatever the variant of the story was. But ultimately,
be tracked down and
Skynet,
killed.
Skynet is coming to get us, or whatever the thing was. And I find it really interesting because I think there is maybe this divide between those people who are already in the industries as such, who are very open-minded and open to it, as you are, Amelia, versus kind of the mainstream public who maybe still have this hesitation, this fear of, it's fine to have a wearable piece of technology like an Apple Watch or, you know, a Fitbit or, you know, something that they're wearing, but to actually put it beneath the skin and into the body, that there is that little line of, I'm not quite comfortable with that yet.
Are you getting goosebumps yet, people? just thinking about this.
But I'm curious, Miki, from your perspective,
woman,
like,
man.
there was this story not that long ago where in London there was a particular company that embedded the chips in people's hands. You know, it was in the kind of flesh between the forefinger and the thumb. And they put the little chip in so that people could kind of, you know, swipe the door and be able to get in, NFC-wise, be able to get into their building or, you know, buy a drink or whatever the thing was within that company. And it was like this press story, and it was kind of quite negative press story. They're like, oh, you know, they're you know, chipping everybody, and it's kind of like Demolition Man, you know, kind of chipping everybody, and it's not good for people. Kind of angle to the story. So there's still that, I think, that general perception of negativity. I'm curious, Miki, from your perspective, when you think about that from a mainstream consumer's perception and fears that they have around that technology, how do we overcome this? How do we get over that hump?
Oh, goodness. Probably from a mainstream consumer perspective, they'll always be freaked out by it because the people that are experimenting with are people that have money. The multi-billionaire billionaires will be doing Richard Branson's space flights and experimenting with things like this, you know, and doing that. Or the people that actually definitely need it for necessity, you know, like, you know, the colorblind enhancements and people that, you know, are sight impaired, hearing impaired, that have one of those senses that potentially need some help. So there are ways to kind of like implement with it. And so, but they're not mainstream. Those are special cases that they need it, and they can be guinea pigs for this type of technology. Mainstream wise, we'll probably pick up when there are simple, easy, fearless ways to use it or have a reason to have a microchip. And I think the biggest case would probably be, we joked about this probably, and if I met you 10 years ago, we would have joked about this, and I feel like I've known you forever, but it's like microchipping your baby. Yep. And now that's happening pretty much, you know, and China will probably get brought up a lot today in our sessions. I know we're talking in the future, but you know, things are happening now, but it's not mainstream yet. So I guess mainstream is everyone having a mobile phone.
Well, but there has to be a tipping point that I think could make it mainstream, and I think that could come down from, you know, a higher, like the government or something, you know? I mean, because if you look at refugees and stuff, I mean, this whole thing about having your identification, having a passport, you know, if you don't have anything, but still we're able to identify people. So, I mean, that kind of goes along with blockchain and where that's going. I can definitely see benefits to it in that respect, but
this is an interesting...
But the mainstream question is
it's
interesting.
An interesting one that hasn't probably been thought about too much yet. But I going on from kind of that identity thing of, you know, digital passports or kind of, you know, NFC chipped passports or whatever the thing may be, that idea that identity becomes something that is integrated to the human body. So we don't have to have these bits of paper and these documentations. But there is this identity that is carried with us. It poses a lot of interesting questions, I think, about, first of all, digital identity and the perception of digital identity, but also the perceptions around privacy and data protection, and how do we protect our identity when it's digital, and then there is a different type of value to digital identity that wasn't there before. So, you know, people buy credit card data, you know, to steal people's credit cards identity. What's the implication when everything about the individual is now being carried in a chip or being carried in, you know, the blockchain or whatever the thing may be, is how much energy is going to go into, you know, now
protecting the data in CRM.
Well,
and all that.
I was thinking more from the flip side of breaking the data, breaking into the data.
But surely a lot of these implants and the biotechs and things will be encrypted with DNA, will be encrypted, potentially voice activated, which you could do now with your banking.
Yeah.
I think that will happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have pondered upon this as a futurist.
Yeah. It's I mean, one thing that's missing for me is the transparency of it. So, and this is the same thing with blockchain stuff. You just want to know what it looks like, and I think that's going to be a really big thing for people because it just sounds so conceptual right now. But
Yeah.
if you know what it looks like, there's an interface on your phone that you say, yes, I want to turn this on.
Mhm.
I mean, the Gates Foundation are working on birth control that you can turn on and off from your cell phone.
Mhm.
I mean, and you start to think about things that way. If I can turn on my passport or whatever, turn on my special powers
Mhm.
and turn it off, and I have that transparency and control over it, then I think that's a cool selling point.
Mm.
But won't that company then, I mean, that's a really great point to bring up, because then
Yeah.
it brings back to, like, in order to implement that app that has that SDK or anything like that,
Yeah.
you got to give your login. You have to
Yeah.
have your
It's
details.
like I say,
Whether
it's
that's
the
true or
perception-
false, made up email
Yeah,
or whatever.
But it's the perception of that privacy and that data.
Well, but
and-
also we
yeah.
already give that stuff away.
I know.
all the
Nobody
time
cares
now.
anymore. They just, how many logins do you have? Probably you. Between the three of us, we're probably
yeah.
triple than an
we're
average
not,
human.
but we're not the norm. We're like, not to be funny,
Proud
about
to be
it,
you.
but, you know, we're kind of slightly ahead of the curve of maybe the mainstream
Sure.
consumer. So from a mainstream consumer perspective, you know, that's not normal for them in terms of there's still a lot of people who cling to this idea of privacy, cling to this idea of it's my data and you can't have it and you should ask me before you take it, and you know all these other things. Whereas kind of people like us, we're just kind of like, yeah, we already understand that you're tracking us every minute of the day, and we already know that you've got access
my soul
to
is
our
sold.
data.
My soul is
Yeah.
sold on MySpace.
It's like
Ship
we're
sale,
less worried about it. We already live our lives reasonably transparently in terms of we accept that there's certain data that you're taking, and in exchange, I get to access certain things and know certain things about whatever.
The mainstream question then
Mm-hmm.
automatically thinks of, you know, when you say mainstream,
Yeah.
you think about what's next to come, and that's the next generation who
Yes.
you don't even give a flipping hoo-ha even more than we do.
Yeah.
Because they're like, yep, want that now.
Yeah.
Access. You know, in order for me to chat to you guys, I'd have to have a login and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's second nature now for any under 14s that
Yeah.
I know, under 15s even,
Well,
and go deeper than that, even like 11-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
but because of that, attention span has shrunk, and it's the now culture. I think something like, yeah, if I can go like this and have the door open, if I can do this and
By
you know,
this, what
sign
she
on my
means is
computer.
swiping.
Oh yeah,
She's waving her hands around. You
she's
can't
doing wax
see
on,
that.
wax off,
Yeah.
lights on, lights off.
Yeah.
Think Karate Kid people. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting though as well, talking about kind of
Sorry,
how
random
voice
references.
technology or gesture technology is kind of going to evolve things. One of the things that I think is quite interesting that I haven't heard too many people talking about it yet, and I'm kind of curious why I'm not hearing more people talk about it, especially in the context of virtual reality and augmented realities. When you think about the HMDs, these big, you know, chunky headsets that people put on their heads, and not enough people seem to be talking about bone conduction technologies. And the idea that actually you can remove these huge, you know, earphones that you need to put over your ears that block all other sound in order to be able to hear the experience or be able to hear what's going on. And to remove that, to be able to use even just the arms of the glasses or the, you know, side of the HMD to be able to have that bone conduction of sound going straight in would completely change this isolated insular experience sound-wise, audio-wise, to be able to still hear what's going on around you, still be able to interact with the room around you. I think it could really change the game, and yet not enough people seem to be talking about those types of technologies.
I think it's so far ahead of the game. And you've got the guy, Neil Harbison, I'm going to say his name wrong, but that's like one of the things, you know, like the human antenna, where he's a colorblind artist, and he's using this technology for the sake of art, but beyond that, for the sake of his own way of life. But, you know, the research I've done and read, like, he blatantly says he doesn't need to have it. He's used to being colorblind and recognizing shapes, and it's cheaper to photocopy in black and white and things like that. Whatever. But, you know, the bone conduction type of technology is really, really interesting to me. And I can think of it from a music industry perspective. And the sound in that, I'm like, I know what I can do with that tech. I know what I can do with that tech. I'm going to call this band that I know. I'm going to call this record label that I know. I'm going to call my people at Live Nation. What do you think about this? Implementing this into 500 festivals around the world. That's how I think about it. I'm thinking about like ways to use this to a consumer point of view that can actually be entertainment that makes sense. But at the same time, if there's something implemented where there is that kind of tracking and ID, then parents feel safer with kids at festivals and things like that. And there's layers and layers and layers. One day I'll be a millionaire. You guys come with me. Come with me. Come on board. But the bone conduction thing, I think, is like, again, that is so not mainstream. It's experimental. Everything we're going to be, you know, chatting about right now, and, you know, is super exciting, and it's experimental, and we can kind of fantasize a bit about it. But there are guinea pigs. taking part in it. It's mostly, again, people with money that can pay for the technology. And also people that need money, because then they get paid to be a part of it.
Hypothetically, I am waiting for my bone conduction
ring
to arrive. Hypothetically,
from your cortex.
In this month. This month being February, I was told it would arrive this month. So I'm not naming names, but you know who you are. And if you don't deliver this month,
bone conductor
I will
master.
name you next month if you have not delivered.
Is it the bone conductor collector?
No.
And so what's it going to do? What's
so it's the ring. It's the ring, and then so you can just literally make phone calls, finger to your ear thing.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of
magnet,
different,
right?
Yeah. There's a couple of different suppliers who are doing it.
Don't put your hotel key up to your ear though.
But that idea that you can just wear a ring or a bracelet and then be able to put your finger to your ear and be able to hear crystal clear sound, I think is quite interesting. And it's the first step towards how do we start to remove these big chunky headphones from experiences that require the headphones to be integrated. And so from my perspective, for immersive technologies, VR and AR, I find it quite interesting.
Yeah.
But what's your view on this, Amelia, in terms of where you think something like bone conduction could be, interesting or integrated into some of these?
Well, I was going to talk about the magnet to the ear and how you can hear things that way. And, I think I think actually it's not as expensive as people think it is.
Not at all.
This,
no.
DIY kind of communities emerging around it, and it's
DIY, but get it at IKEA. Flat pack bone conductor kit.
Yeah, and for me, I totally get wanting to experience the world in a new way that maybe no other humans experienced it before. Like I get why Neil does that. There's a Cyborg Nest. They have a product out called Northsense, and it's a wearable, attaches to you. So every time
you're a human compass.
Yeah. So every time you face north, you get a little vibration. And what it does is it just changes the way you interact with the world. So there's all this other stuff going on that we aren't really, aware of. So I think it's really fascinating to change that relationship that we have. We've all gotten so used to this reality. And if we can just start adding dimensions onto this reality in this world right here without going to Mars, I think there's still a lot more to explore. The human potential is I think still has great room for experimentation.
But you wouldn't say no to a trip to Mars, would you?
Personally, would. I don't want to go to Mars.
No. Yeah, I'm so cool. They haven't been to DC in the summer, right?
Yeah, right.
So I am curious though, ladies, in terms of the significant change that you think could completely change the playing field, be that a cultural shift or a technological shift, when it comes to the integration of technology into the human form, what is that big shift that needs to happen? And what do you think that it's going to be, whether it's a technological shift or a cultural shift? What is that one thing that's going to change?
Those are two changes, and I think both of those are relevant, completely cultural and.
But
okay, again, like we always talk about, this kind of, in the kind of VR sense, is in the chunky phone stage, blah 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 blah. And back in the day, we're making content for mobile phones on tiny little Nokias, and the screens were this big.
By this week, she was like literally showing us something.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Okay, the size of a toothpaste tube, and then the size of like a 1-inch screen, a 1.5-inch screen. Just Google it, people. Nokia from 1999. But ultimately, you can, as content creators, we can create content and put it on a platform. Will enough people have access to those devices in order to appreciate it? It doesn't mean the content's bad and what you're creating is bad. But as soon as those devices become easier to use and better to use, then you have critical mass gaining, and then the technology, there's a demand for it, so there's a reason for the tech companies and phone companies and anything else to make them better. And the VR sets, as we know so well, are kind of, they'll get smaller too. And that's where I think any of these kind of like the biotechs and these kind of, we won't go into the blockchains and things like that, but if you are talking about, that's also going to be, water cooler chat and people talking about it like a little bit more, and like, oh, did you see Bobby at school plays on the football team, and he's got this chip now so his mom knows where it is or something. Yeah, I mean, like every conference we go to, people mention Black Mirror, but we're not,
we already live Black Mirror.
We live Black Mirror, people. And there's that episode where the baby's born and, you know, I think there is a chip in it and then the mother can track it, you know, pros and cons, which is why that makes that show so great. So it shows like, well, here's what could happen when it gets obsessive about the tech.
Yeah.
You know, I think where it's really going to prove great case studies again are like in therapy sessions and the medical worlds, like where you can implement it to check blood pressure, diabetes, things like that, or temperatures, where it is beneficial.
Yeah.
And using those as really, really solid, here's how it's working well. And then you can be a little bit more, dare I say, creative with your tech. Yes, give me a call.
And to sort of go along with that, you know, if we can have implantables that let us live longer, that let our skin stay, you know, smooth and not wrinkly and all this kind of stuff, then people are gonna, you know, go for that.
Botox chips?
Yeah, like if it, you know, anything that appeals to people's vanity or lengthening life, I think. But then also, you know, I mean, there is a risk that something could happen and you know, we go to turn on our computers one day and we have no Wi-Fi, we have no files, we have no data. So you think about then, well, if I had what really it matters to me in my life, you know, my identity, my property, you know, all that kind of stuff, and I am then responsible for that because it's in my body and I own that, then that gives a bit more control back to people.
I'm worried about like the people that are trying like some kind of like, you know, malfunction. You know, like the lasers through the glasses are going like behind your retina and something like that, freaking out. So I don't know. It's kind of like, again, like maybe even 5-10 years ago when phones were like people going like, oh my God, I'm getting radiation through my ear. I'm like, oh my God, you're not. You know? And like more and more people trying, like, when will they sell chips to embed under your skin at Boots?
Yeah. It would just
Could
be a little
probably
punch
happen.
gun.
Well, if it's a diet pill or something, I mean, if I have something like that I, you know, I don't want to eat for a couple days or something.
Your pregnancy things and things like that are genuinely happening. And sometimes the microchips, a lot of people think, happy listeners of Digital Jam Sessions, you might be thinking like phone size or this plate that gets inserted into you, like
Well,
Spock
smart
style.
pills is actually a thing.
Well, yeah, like even...
What? Smart pills are actually a thing.
Yeah, but there could be microchips the size of the tip of a lead pencil.
Yeah.
0.2 millimeter style. Or, you know, like, you know, nowadays, if your animal and your pet is not microchips, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because then if your dog or cat does go missing, it's horrific.
Yeah.
And then if you do have that microchip, it's a sense of, you know...
security.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's safety and humane reasons.
Well, but also, how many of my friends have, instead of taking birth control, they have an implant that lasts for 4 years, you know? They said, somebody said the other day, you know, women are the original cyborgs. You know, like, I mean, we've been embracing this stuff for years. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, anything that offers that kind of a benefit, and we don't think about that like an implant, but it's technology in the body. That is,
and it really genuinely has been going on quite a long time.
Yeah.
You know, what is bringing awareness to, you know, mass consumption or that, you know, always back to our conversations, like when is it going to become normal for people to have this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
You know, things are starting to trickle in now where it goes from you know, a Wired magazine article to the front of any other, like Guardian or Daily Mail or anything else, or, you know, beyond your red top.
I'm still waiting for people to catch up with the curve ring at this point.
I know, you're so trendy. I'm interested in when you're getting your little bone technology chip.
It's apparently this month.
Oh
so I'm waiting for it to
arrive. Is it an operation? How does it work then?
Well, I don't know. I have to read the instructions when they arrive.
Oh, what is it? You have to do it in your...
No, it's just a ring. It's not inside, but it's just a ring.
Oh, I thought you were getting a bone conductor thing.
It's it's bone conductor, but it's a ring.
I got it. Sorry.
So,
okay. Sorry, listeners. I was like going, oh my God, you're actually going to do the thing? And
I'm going to look into it. Yeah. I'm interested in getting an RFID tag or maybe a magnet or something.
Right.
We're going to revisit this conversation when Amalia has the technology.
What if we all three of us do it?
Yeah.
Because we each kind of have our own separate lives. And if we reconvene 6 months from today, whatever, or 6 months from the day we get our ring. like a reunion.
We'll do our bring together our superpowers.
Like our bone conductor agreement. Oh my God, how awesome is that, baby? Can you imagine?
Okay.
Well, we'll get to Mars, like, just by, you know.
So, as always, we like to give our listeners a way to find out a little bit more about what you're up to. And we ask you to do that by sharing your social media handle of choice. What would that be?
You can always find me on Twitter at MookieApproved.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter too, at Amelia Kallman, AmeliaKallman.
Thank you. Well, thank you for listening. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe and review, and follow us on Twitter at Digital Jam Ltd. Thinking of starting your own podcast? Why not speak to the GL Pro UK team? They handle all of our podcasting service needs. Tell them that Digital Jam Session sent you and you'll get 10% off your first order. Find out more at www.glpro.co.uk. digitaljamsessions.com